Hey, welcome back, fellow Patriots. Welcome back to another episode of Patriots of the American Republic. Let's go ahead and jump into it. I've titled this episode Democratic Exodus because it seems like for the past several years there's been a number of prominent Democrats that have left the Democratic Party. And it should make us wonder, should make some of us wonder why. Now, back in I don't know, 2015, 2016, Roseanne Barr said something very profound that holds true for many in today's political spectrum. After being accused of becoming a right-winger, she said, "I didn't move anywhere, y'all moved," indicating her political position hasn't changed, but they've gone so far to the left that it no longer resembles what they once were. And I believe she's absolutely correct. Most of us can look back and see the difference of the Democratic Party, from today versus like the Democratic Party of, heck, even Bill Clinton's era, right? It's a complete difference. I mean, we've shown videos of how they went from rare and limited abortion to abortion at any time and for any reason. We've shown how they went from illegal immigration is not good for America to complete open border, let everybody in, right? A clear example of their shift can be seen in Bernie Sanders' socialistic popularity that took place, back in 2016. I mean, socialism was, on the outskirts of the left, right? There were very few socialists. It wasn't mainstream until he came onto the scene. So naturally, they aren't going to come out and say that they're socialists because that carries a negative vibe to it. But like we've mentioned before, the left is their master linguistics. So they'll use words like wealth distribution to disguise really what they're trying to say, right? So since we didn't all start in the same point, we need to take from those who have more to give to those who don't in order for everyone to finish in the same place, right? That's called equity. Again, one of those words that they disguise and they phrase. But I mean, when you look at the root behind it, that's what it is. It's taking something from someone who has it to give it to someone that didn't earn it, and by force. Because if the government's coming to take away what rightfully belongs to you that you earned, I mean, isn't that what socialism is? But anyhow, Democrats have changed so drastically that many lifelong Democrats have noticed it and have taken a bold step to switch positions or change their positions, right? The switching positions would mean that maybe they may come over to the right. And that's not true. In most of these cases, leftists, once they start to waken up, they kind of start to move more towards the center. They start to become a bit more centrist and a little bit more independent. And that's exactly what we're going to go through. Now, Elon Musk seems to be one of those exceptions. So that's our first guy that we're going to talk about, Elon Musk. Thanks to the left's insanity in 2022, Elon Musk, who recognized the insanity, admitted to voting Republican for the first time in his life. He voted for Congresswoman Mayra Flores. Now, the backlash that Elon received was expected. They immediately began calling him a racist and the usual chants of Nazism, etc., etc. What's interesting is that Elon was a lifelong Democrat. I mean, he voted for Clinton, he voted for Obama, probably voted for Gore, I don't know. But, imagine calling someone a racist after voting for a Hispanic person because Mayra Flores was a Hispanic congresswoman. I mean, does that really make sense? But, again, we're talking about the left. Very little that they do makes sense, right? So the left who once praised Elon Musk has, by this point, completely turned on him, especially since now he's in full swing MAGA support. But let's take a look when he first made his switch.
So it's not easy. It's easy to see where the Democrats seem absolutely unhinged. And I would say the same thing if there was that behavior on the part of Republicans. Elon Musk has noticed that. And the richest man in the world tweeted this out yesterday. He says, "In the past, I voted Democrat because they were mostly the kindness party. But they have become the party of division and hate. So I can no longer support them and will vote Republican. Now, watch their dirty tricks and campaign against me unfold." And by the way, it happened against Tesla. They were removed yesterday from the S&P 500 index because they claimed that their stock dropped so much. He also said that mysteriously Tesla didn't make the list of the most environmentally exemplary companies. But guess who did? Exxon. It's rated the 10 best in the world. He goes, Tesla didn't make it. It's a scam. This whole thing's been weaponized by phony social justice warriors. And that's what we've been saying forever on different circumstances.
You know, it's interesting. He voted for Barack Obama. He says he's always voted for Democrats, but this year it will be different. He'll vote Republican.
We don't know what the heck is going on. Why is one tweet doing well? Why is another tweet not? Is it the algorithm? Did someone manually intervene? Why are some accounts banned with no recourse, apparently? The reality is that Twitter at this point, has a very far left bias. And I would class myself as a moderate, and neither Republican nor Democrat. And in fact, I have voted overwhelmingly for Democrats historically, overwhelmingly. Like I'm not sure. I might never have voted for a Republican, just to be clear.
Right.
Now this election, I will.
What's really happening, and Elon Musk is onto it, is the Democratic Party has no longer the liberal ACLU principled free speech clash ideologically with your opponent's party. It has really become a suppressive party that believes that the other side is not entitled to its opinion, and if you espouse it, you should be shut down, just like on a college campus. But the most profound thing he said, Sean, is that I've never voted Republican before, but I will this November. I can't help but wonder how many fellow Americans are in the same boat. I just think there's so many people, Hispanic Americans, African Americans, who say I've traditionally been a Democrat, but I can't put up with this any longer. And that's what Elon Musk has got his finger on.
So, yeah, as you can see there, I mean, being a Republican automatically comes with a bunch of negative connotations to it, right? I don't understand. But anyhow, you heard it from his own words. You saw it from his own tweet. He made the switch, and obviously we can see that, and that was 2 years ago, so we can see 2 years later where he's at, right? He's fully recognized where the Democrats have gone, and he's, again, I don't know how I would classify him, but he's definitely on the MAGA train. He's been a huge supporter of Trump. As a matter of fact, he just joined him not too long ago on a rally, and he's, I think, open to joining Trump's administration should Trump win, and really trying to help, minimize wasteful government spending. So kind of an oversight, an audit to government, because he feels that our taxpayer dollars are getting wasted, and I would agree with him. Anyhow, moving on to the next person is Tulsi Gabbard. In 2020 presidential election, Tulsi Gabbard announced her bid for the presidency as a Democratic candidate. During the debate, Tulsi did not hold back as she unleashed a barrage of verbal arrows towards the war industrial complex. She ripped, at the time, Senator Kamala Harris apart. And then she committed blasphemy by going after Hillary Clinton herself, right? That's like sacrilegious for the Democrats, right? So because of these things that I mentioned, this is how the left saw and portrayed Tulsi Gabbard.
And let's introduce underdog candidate and tonight's villain, Tulsi Gabbard.
Thank you, Rachel. What an honor it is to be on this stage with my fellow candidates. I want you to know that I smell your fear and it makes me stronger. I'm wearing the white suit of your fallen hero, Hillary Clinton. Now fight me, cowards.
Maybe we need to have fewer debates. I think you're hurting your cause.
Speaking of hurting our cause,
Tulsi Gabbard?
present.
Why are you here?
Democrats, I'll get you, my party, and your little mayor, too.
Notice how they didn't even try to hide their feelings. They straight out called her a villain and played villainous music and had villainous undertones. It's absolutely terrible. In all honesty, Tulsi Gabbard was the only Democrat that I could actually listen to back in 2020, because most of her ideas were reasonable. I mean, they were so reasonable. I asked myself, why is she even a Democrat when her party no longer believes in what she believes in? I mean, she's completely opposite of what they stand for today, so it just didn't make sense to me. So eventually, like Elon, Tulsi realized that the party had changed so much that it became unrecognizable to her, thus causing her to leave the party about 2 years ago. Let's take a look at why she left.
And somebody I want to interview now is Tulsi Gabbard, because remember, she ran for president as a Democrat not too long ago. She just put out a couple of tweets that are going to have people wondering what she up to, because she just tweeted, "I believe in a government that is of, by, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government of, by, and for the powerful elite. I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, I invite you to join me."
Tulsi Gabbard joins us tonight, and we're happy that she is. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for coming on tonight. That was quite a statement. I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, we have Republicans on the show from time to time. They don't put it as clearly and bravely as you do. So how do you feel? I mean, you've been in this party a long time. You were its future. You left. I mean, this has got to be kind of a fraught moment for you.
Tucker, as you know, I've always been an independent-minded person, a Democrat, yes, but an independent Democrat. And my loyalties are very clear. I love our country, and I took an oath both as a service member, as a soldier, as well as a member of Congress to support and defend the Constitution. And that's an oath that I take extremely seriously. And so when you look at this party, the today's Democratic Party, it's controlled by fanatical ideologues who hate freedom. They despise the Constitution. They actively find ways to undermine our God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution, like freedom of speech. If you say something and I say something that they don't like, instead of saying, you know what, agree to disagree, live and let live in the traditional liberalist kind of way, no, that's not good enough. They will do all that they can to destroy you, silence you, smear you, work with big tech, work with corporate media to actively destroy anyone who dares to even question their agenda. They are against freedom of religion. They are hostile towards people of faith, people who have their own spiritual practice, especially Christians, finding ways to be vindictive, to discriminate, to punish people who happen to exercise that freedom of religion. The list goes on, but the foundation of freedom is really what was at the heart of my making this decision, that I cannot be a member of a party that is against freedom and actively trying to undermine it.
Wow. I mean, Tulsi, in her own words, expresses exactly what we have talked about on this podcast for quite some time. As a matter of fact, we did an episode just a couple months ago, the real threat to democracy, and showing the similarities between today's modern day Democratic Party and the Maduro regime. The similarities are profound. They scream out to me when I see these things, and they scream out to a lot of Cuban Americans and Venezuelan Americans now, as my wife, who was born there and saw the collapse of her country into the dictatorship that it's become now. When she sees certain things going on in our political environment, she goes, "Oh my gosh, that reminds me of back then over there, and how they did this and they did that, and so on and so forth." So it's exactly what I've been saying for quite some time. There's a reason why the majority of Cubans vote Republican. The ones that came straight from Cuba, the ones who've actually experienced communism, they see the similarities as well, similar talking points, and to them it raises red flags. Just like, people that come from, European countries. I've actually talked to a number of people that have come from European countries that have also experienced communism when it existed in their country, whether it be Romania or something else, Poland, whatever the case may be, and they hear it as well. So it's not just on the Cuban side. Communism, socialism, it comes from the same playbook, right? They may change certain things here and there just to masquerade it, but it's still the same. So moving on to our next person, we reported this again a couple months back. Joe Manchin, a lifelong, in my opinion, moderate Democrat, has realized his party's gone too far. Now, to kind of even it out, he's essentially said that both parties have their extremists, and everybody says that. And I would like to know what constitutes an extremist on the Republican side, because I have not personally met extremists. I've heard the left call us extremists. Like if you're a person of faith if you believe in certain things. Heck, if you are a nationalist, they consider you a white supremacist and an extremist. Again, when we look at what each side has stood for, the Republican Party has not changed. The Republican Party has always been for God, family, and country. Not in that order, but, and we're still those things today. So I don't know what these people talk about when they say that there's extremists on both sides, but whatever. During my time that I've been following politics, Joe was one of those few reasonable Democrats that would usually side with Republicans, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that West Virginia is a red state, and if he starts to go against, and it's not even by a close margin from what I recall, but if he starts to go against the grain, he could very well lose his job. So here is a reminder, a refresher of Joe Manchin leaving the Democratic Party.
All right, folks, so here's the first story. Breaking. Senator Joe Manchin leaves Democrat Party, registering as an independent. He released this tweet on the morning of May 31st, 2024. My commitment to do everything I can to bring our country together has led me to register as an independent, with no party affiliation. In a statement in response, Manchin said, "From my first day in public service in 1982, I've always focused on doing what's best for my state and my country, without regard to party or politics. Throughout my days in elected office, I have always been proud of my commitment to common sense, bipartisanship, and my desire to bring people together. It's who I am. It's who I always will be. I have never seen America through a partisan lens. However, since becoming a United States Senator in 2010, I've seen both the Democrat and Republican parties leave West Virginia and our country behind for partisan extremism while jeopardizing our democracy. Today, our national politics are broken. Neither party is willing to compromise to find common ground. To stay true to myself and remain committed to put our country before party, I have decided to register as an independent with no party affiliation and continue to fight for America's sensible majority." Now, he didn't say it outright, but he's literally talking about partisan extremism and jeopardizing democracy as he's leaving the Democrat Party. So it's not the typical left-wing shtick about preserving democracy from the evil right-wing fascist alt-right mob. No, it seems as though he's referencing party extremism on both sides and a threat to democracy, and then decides to resign on the morning after the Trump verdict. I don't think it's a coincidence. It's a shocking escalation, and obviously it's having a big impact. And in this case, that impact may be Joe Manchin deciding to leave the Democrat Party. I wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't want my brand or political legacy anywhere near what the Democrats are doing.
So, as you can see, Joe Manchin leaves the Democratic Party, becomes independent, like most of the people here, again, for the exception of Elon Musk. And if you ask why are they becoming independent, well, because they're two polar opposites, right? At this point, right? And I think if I could take a guess and pinpoint one subject matter that keeps these people from coming over, either becoming Republican or being considered conservative, it's more than likely the abortion topic. But that we're going to save that for another topic or another episode. Right now, I do want to play really quick somebody who's new, relatively new in comparison, and that's Kristen Sinema. I believe that she won back in, I'm not sure if it was 2022 or maybe 2020 over there, and I think if I'm not mistaken, it was Arizona. But anyhow, here she is, 2 years after she got into office, she decides to leave the Democratic Party and become an independent.
You're here to make a significant announcement.
I've registered as an Arizona independent. I know some people might be a little bit surprised by this, but actually, I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, a growing number of Arizonans and people like me just don't feel like we fit neatly into one party's box or the other. And so, like many across the state and the nation, I've decided to leave that partisan process and really just focus on the work that I think matters to Arizona and to our country, which is solving problems and getting things done.
Now, one of the most surprising and exciting turns for me has been RFK Jr. I've been following RFK since about 2017 when he talked about the country's current health and his issues with vaccines and the rise of autism, etc. To be very honest, autism was not something that I was familiar with growing up. And it's scary to see how many kids have it in today's day and age. I mean, what changed and why does this seem to be happening more frequently? You know, I don't know, but if I look at the 2020 pandemic, if it taught me anything, it's to question everything. When it does, especially when it doesn't make sense. Now, let me ask you a question. How many experts came out and said one thing one moment and then something different another moment after what they said didn't pan out. Oh, remember, like, if you take the jab, you're not going to get sick, and then you got sick, right? Well, if you take the jab, you're not going to get seriously sick, and then you got seriously sick. And then if you take the jab, you're not going to be hospitalized, and then you got hospitalized. And they continuously moved the goalposts like we have shown on this channel before. Similarly, I recall experts back between the 80s and the 90s when I was small, and I wasn't paying attention, but you hear things, you remember certain things. I remember them saying that there was no link between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer. Where are we today with that, right? How many experts stood before Congress and professionals and doctors and all that stuff? You know what? They probably got paid a lucrative amount to do that, right? So when I heard RFK switch gears and throw his support behind Trump, I was really excited. Do I agree with all of RFK's views? No, just like I don't agree with all of Trump's views or anyone else's views for that matter. I mean, we're all different. I look at what matters and what is the person focused on. In regards to RFK, his focus is on improving America's health, and that's something that I can get behind. His speech, which I recommend listening to in its entirety, it's too long for me to play out, but I'm going to give you two major points from his speech, which is, his views on the Democratic Party of today, and then his vision for America's health. Those are the two clips that I want to play. Let's first take a look at him leaving the Democratic Party.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision.
Did you pick up on those details, on some of those details that he said? How they subverted, they stopped the primaries, to masquerade or to cover the mental decline of Joe Biden, right? And he goes on to say, in the speech, that his father and his uncle would not recognize the party today. The party that they represented, the party that they were a part of, the party that they have been their entire lives committed to, is unrecognizable to them. Now, in that speech, he also talks about, he gives specifics on, the health of America in comparison to other countries and where we're at, and obesity and all these different types of ailments, asthma, autism, ADHD, etc., etc. And I wanted to play that for you, but it is pretty long. But I want to give you, and this might be the same amount of time, but there was I don't know if it was a commercial or documentary, I don't know, but there's a clip here that is pretty long, and I am going to let it play because I think it's important, where he goes over a lot of information. This is very, very concerning, and I've seen this. The stuff that we have here in this country, the ingredients, and it's the same product, in other countries doesn't have the same stuff, the same chemicals. So check this out, and I really want you guys to hear what he has to say here.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way until the early 1990s. Our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? Well, a big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tetrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. A century ago, it was just an obnoxious industrial byproduct that everybody was trying to figure out ways to get rid of. One of the ways that they did that was by paving roads. But then a British chemist figured out that the coal tar could be used to derive fabric dye. And if fabric dye, why not food? Food manufacturers began using it to cover up the discoloration of low-quality foods that they wanted to pass off on unsuspecting customers. They didn't know back then that this yellow dye, tartrazine, causes tumors, asthma, developmental delays, neurological damage, ADD, ADHD, hormone disruption, gene damage, anxiety, depression, intestinal injuries. Well, we know it now. We've known this for decades. That's why tartrazine is heavily restricted in other countries. In some countries, foods with tartrazine have a warning label that it may cause ADHD in children. Today, it's made from petroleum, not coal tar. Either way, it's crazy to add this to your kids' favorite foods. It doesn't even change the flavor. This yellow dye isn't just in junk food. It's in the foods that we consider healthy. It's in everyday kids' snacks like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks. It's in sports drinks like Gatorade and so-called vitamin water. It's even added to chicken broth, to corn, to pickles, to mustard, and to yogurt. And so, of course, our kids get sick. And we lovingly feed them chewable vitamins which have, surprise, tartrazine. And so the cycle continues until the coughs and asthma kick in, at which point you go to pick up some cough syrup. And yeah, you guessed it, tartrazine. I've been picking on tartrazine today, but that's just one of at least 100 chemical poisons that our health agencies allow into our children's food. I can make a video just like this to talk about Red 40, BHA, BHD, potassium bromate, chemical after chemical, and on and on and on. If just one of them can cause all of these problems, imagine what they're doing in combination. That has never been studied. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives. It's not all dark. Over the past 16 years, the government has banned 8 chemical additives that cause cancer, genetic damage, asthma, and many of the other self-conditions as tartrazine does. And you know what's interesting? All 8 of those crucial steps forward in our kids' health were taken under President Trump. But the Democrats who claim to be all about health care have stood by watching other countries ban these poisons and make our kids sick, asthmatic, hyperactive, and depressed. They left them on every supermarket shelf in America. They even used your tax money to put them in your kids' school lunch. So their big food and their big ag donors probably gave them all that golden handshake and the big money hug. And their big pharma donors probably called them up and thanked them also, because now they're going to make billions selling Adderall, Prozac, and rescue inhalers. Enough is enough. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
So that was pretty long, but it was really important because obesity is a serious issue in our country. As there seems to be, a lot of overweight people. If I look back to when I grew up, I was born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s, most people were relatively thin, right? So last year I took my kids to Olive Garden for dinner, right? And I'm not kidding you. We were the only thin people in the entire restaurant. I'm not exaggerating. I leaned over to my son, Kevin, and I said, Kevin, look around and see if you see what I'm seeing. And he confirmed it. He goes, Dad, everybody here is heavyset. And I go, I know, we're the only thin people here. So it's something that is really impacting our society, and it really needs to be addressed. So it's really important to have RFK, take this mantle, if you will. Now, I know perhaps some of the prior folks we mentioned may not be as big or well known, but when you have a Kennedy calling out the Democratic Party and switching parties, that's huge. In this speech, RFK says he wants to make America healthy again, and I believe that is his intention. This man has not only gotten backlash from regular folks, but even his own family members. No one goes through that just for the heck of it, right? I'm sure this man's decision came at a great cost, and it's recognized and appreciated by people like me, to be honest with you, because anytime you stand up to the left, you know that you're going to get hammered, and if you still stand strong, that's pretty courageous in a way, right? The final example that I have for you is actually Ana Kasparian from the Young Turks. There are so many examples that we can go by, but one that has recently caught the attention of many is the very lovely Ana Kasparian from the Young Turks, right? For several months, she has been showing signs of what I would call common sense brain activity, right? Because the left doesn't operate on common sense. They just operate on emotions, thinking those are logical positions. No example is clearer than, the defund the police. That just doesn't make sense, right? So that movement, which was 100% politically based on emotions and reactions perpetrated by the left. If you think about it, you decrease police presence, you're going to increase crime. I mean, it's just, anyhow. So over the last, I would say 2 years, Anna's logical side of her has been, the logical side of her brain has been dominating her emotional side. And it's causing her to question some of her prior beliefs, prior positions, and where she stood. And so this may have started when, the left went after her for reporting on the policy cracks and failures of Portugal's decriminalization of drugs, which she supported. She originally supported that. So let's take a quick look just to see where this possibly could have started.
I mean, she went no holds barred against every socialist wannabe revolutionary in the comments. Here's one individual who writes, "Just admit that you've gone conservative 'cause it pays. We all understand. It's cool. Yeah, being conservative really pays. Companies don't want anything to deal with you. You're at constant threat of being deplatformed. Oh, really pays." She then responds, "These people are literally the dumbest people on the planet. No logic, no common sense, just endless chirping on the net because I don't want to be in a cult." And also this, "What is it like to go through life with brain worms? Does your mom wipe your behind for you too?" And so you can see just the general sentiment. She's clearly done, and I really think it's a beautiful moment. It's a moment of inflection. We're starting to see a new path being paved away from the crazy. There seems to be a growing bipartisan consensus that woke leftism is in fact a woke mind virus. And hopefully some of these political conversations and points of disagreement start coming back to a point of common sense where the adults can hopefully finally take control over the room again. The craziness has got to stop.
So examples like that, whenever she pushes back against the left, and it's not even that she's pushing back specifically against the left, she's just pushing back on, I guess, things that the left supports, right? And so she gets a ton of backlash, which is now causing her to, I guess, either react or think or, I don't do some soul searching. But let's take a look at a compilation of videos that I've put together myself showing Hannah just going bonkers on the left.
Well, the crew over at Morning Joe on MSNBC, the same crew that wanted Biden to continue running in this presidential race, despite the fact that he was suffering from clear cognitive decline. Yeah, those people, they're furious that journalists would have the audacity of ever reporting anything negative on the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, because Trump he's a special threat. And so since they've decided that Trump is a very special threat, well, then journalists should hide information about Kamala Harris from you. So you don't vote for Trump and definitely vote for Kamala Harris. In other words, they want the media to manipulate you and do the exact opposite of journalism. You just witnessed Nancy Pelosi proudly display her hypocrisy in the context of the same interview, the same conversation within 3 minutes. That was incredible. She goes from fear-mongering about Donald Trump and his lack of respect for freedom of the press, and then goes on to accuse an anchor at MSNBC, Katie Tur, of being an apologist for Donald Trump for simply stating a fact. That was an incredible moment, and she should be called out for it. The idea that she is now facing criticism and prosecution simply because she happens to be a black woman is ridiculous, and yet another example of providing cover for illegal behavior, bad behavior, by using and weaponizing race. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting when it happens, and I'm sick of it. And the reason why I'm so angry about this at this point is because, honestly, our side of the political aisle loves to provide cover for it, and I find it gross, and I'm done doing it. I'm done trying to be understanding toward that perspective. I'm not understanding anymore. It is destroying communities. It is mostly victimizing majority black and brown communities. Stores are shutting down, people are losing their jobs, and then you have these wannabe revolutionaries streaming day in and day out, providing cover for this garbage. I'm not into it. It's stupid, and I'm glad she got arrested. Great. Dismembering a corpse and hiding a corpse after dismembering it, not bail eligible, not a serious crime. I'm not even kidding, guys. Like, when Joy Behar outlined that case, I was like, she's crazy. This isn't a thing. This isn't real. This isn't real. So I looked it up. It's real, guys. It's real. Listen, if being on the left means supporting this, then I'm not on the left, and I'm okay with that. All four pleaded not guilty. The judge released them without bail. They were fitted with GPS monitoring and must report in-person probation and surrender their passports.
I don't care about their passports.
Dude, guys, like what? Okay, so did further research because I just couldn't believe it. Here's more. With 2019 state reforms, mutilation and disposal of murdered corpses are among crimes that are no longer bail eligible. The DA said the four went to barbaric lengths to cover the crime. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing, Cenk? What are we doing? What are we doing? Someone tell me, what the F are we doing? How many times do we need to be disappointed by them? I'm done with them. And personally, I don't speak for everyone in this network. I want to be clear. I'm speaking for myself. I'm done with them completely. The Democratic Party, every single one of them, that includes the squad, I don't care anymore. They have not delivered. They have not delivered. I'm done. Okay. It's time to organize, create organizations that get women and get people in this country what they need. People who are willing to pick up the slack for these disgusting, feckless, corrupt politicians. That's what we need to focus on.
So now, just to be clear, Hannah's not getting red-pilled, if you will. That implies that they're coming over to the conservative side, and I don't think that's true, like I said, for any of these folks. What doesn't mean is that it moves them closer to the middle, right? Although she still associates as being a leftist, she doesn't want to be confined by a specific, quote-unquote, political tribe. But I'm glad that she is using her critical thinking and pushing back against, things that just don't make sense, pushing back on feelings-driven narratives, and that she's taking a look in the mirror for ideas, views, and positions that, she had incorrect views on, right? So she's reflecting, which is a good thing. Just like all the other folks that we talked about in this video, though I can't welcome them to the right, I'm at least glad that they're in the middle and looking more in our direction than, honestly, ever before, right? They're starting to move that needle, if you will. Now, we just went through some prominent people, but guess what? There's some regular, everyday folks that are also switching, and there's tons of examples from all different backgrounds. We got Hispanics, we got blacks, we got women, we got gays, we got a whole bunch of people that you would normally say that, or the Democratic Party would normally say, we got these people in our pocket. We don't really have to do much, right? They are paying attention. They are wakening up. They're wakening up to the facade, to the falsehood, to the scam, to the lies, to however you want to say it. But let's take a look at some of these folks, everyday folks, that are switching gears.
Even Kamala Harris supporters are getting a rude awakening. They're not buying it.
Day 6. And I just can't help but, I literally am just crying for my people. And how could the government do us like this? And how could the whole country just forget about us? It's not enough. What is being done is not enough. There are entire communities that have been just decimated. Where is our government? For Kamala, and I am an avid supporter for her to stand in Florida today and make a statement. Where is our government? Where's the president? Where is that? These people are so hardworking. They have struggled and struggled and struggled for generations to have what little bit they do. And it is completely wiped out from under them. And you can't do any more. You can't send any more support or any help.
And again, I don't blame them.
Okay, I'm gonna get real in this, and it's probably gonna piss some people off. But I'm okay with that, because if I'm not being honest, then what else am I doing? I just got back from the DNC where I signed up to volunteer. And when I initially had signed up to volunteer, Joe Biden was still the nominee. It wasn't yet Kamala Harris. I've worked in progressive politics for a long time. I have worked for many different Democratic candidates, Senate candidates, House candidates, even some Democratic organizations. And as the years have gone by, I found myself getting more and more disillusioned with the Democratic Party, although until now, I've never said that out loud or anywhere public. When I first got into politics, I thought that Democrats were the party of the people. And at the DNC this week, I felt like I was in a building with the most elite and out-of-touch people in the entire world. It very much felt like, let's just have a huge party and forget all of our problems because the vibes are brat. When I was there, I didn't feel any connection to real America or the place that I come from, which is the Midwest, Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri. I didn't feel any connection to the people that I know right now who are struggling to buy their groceries or to pay their rent. The people who want to know what both candidates are going to do to materially affect change in their lives. And when I was there listening to the speeches, I felt myself feeling mad because I didn't hear anything about the economy. Definitely not in Kamala's speech, and not very much in the others as well. Let's make the military the most lethal in the world. I thought I was part of the anti-war party. I thought I was part of the party that fought for the underdog, that championed working people. When and how did we just become the party of academia and affluence? Because that's what we are right now. How can we ever say that we're going to fight corporate power or give a voice back to those communities that have been left behind when above the delegates on the floor in levels and levels and rings of suites with donors and corporations, that we're literally looking down on the people below from above? That's what Chris Cuomo said, and he's absolutely right. You know, I went to the DNC this year hoping that I would feel reconnected to the Democratic Party, that I would have more of a sense of understanding of Kamala and her candidacy and what she stood for. But instead, I ended up leaving and feeling the opposite, more disconnected and alone than ever. And I don't think I can support Kamala Harris for president. I don't even know if I can call myself a Democrat anymore.
So as you can see there, regular everyday Americans waking up to the reality that the Democrats are not what they once used to be. As a matter of fact, we've had 3 guests on this show. They used to be four. They used to be former Democrats. Saul, my brother-in-law, voted. I don't know if he was a registered Democrat or not. I think he was. But I think he's mentioned it on our channel before that he voted for Obama twice until he, got red pilled. He saw that Obama wasn't doing anything and was just, not meeting, whatever vision that he had for him, and he woke up and switched on over to the Republican side, right? We've had Adam Francisco. Adam Francisco will tell you himself. He was red pilled back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. He used to be a Democrat and big liberal. Ray from Ray Studios, another guy who also was a Democrat and came on over. I can't remember when he switched over. I would probably say around the same time, 2019, 2020, maybe around there. And then we also had Osiris. Osiris used to, again, I don't know if he was a registered Democrat, but he used to swing left, and he's moved himself more to the middle. He's not a conservative. He's not there, but the name of his show is Stuck in the Middle. So he's kind of where all these other folks were. The point is that he left the Democratic Party. So overall, guys, there's so many people waking up to the hypocrisy. I think that all of us need to continue doing what we're doing. We need to keep exposing these liars, exposing their hypocrisy, their double standards, their flip-flops, all the things that we've been doing because it's working. We may not think it's working, but it is working because we've got people noticing, paying attention, and I think that they're finally waking up to the fact that the Democratic Party is not what they once were. They have become quite the opposite. They're no longer the party of the people. They are the party of the elitists, right? They pretend to defend democracy while subverting it, right? They have done so many different things to put democracy, our freedoms in jeopardy, like Tulsi Gabbard had mentioned. But anyhow, guys, that is what I have for you. Thank you so much for joining me. We are very, very close to our election, and go Trump, right? So God bless you guys. Thank you for joining into my channel. God bless America. God bless Trump 2024.